I'm Cheryl Toth,
And I'm Rich Lure.
and we're co-owners of Air Gear, and we started this video series to answer real questions from real Airstreamers because we get them all the time to customer support, to our email for our online store, from our blog. And after our first episode, we got a really interesting question from Lance, and it seemed like it was about his CPAP. However, it was really addressing a bigger issue, which is why do my batteries go dead when I'm camping? So that's why we kind of structured this video about that.
Yes, it's a much bigger problem. It affects all kinds of Airstreamers, whether you have a CPAP or not. The batteries keep going dead, and people don't understand why. There's a lot of folklore around there, and we're going to try to explain exactly what's going on and hopefully help you prevent the problem in the future.
Yeah, and we, as a reminder, we really strive to research things and use fact-based information, not folklore, to answer it. And you did quite a bit of research in math, which we're going to get into.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I want you to do the
Yes.
few basics, which I know Rich has drilled this into me, being a pretty new Airstreamer, over and over. What are those basics you need to know?
So the first thing that you should know is that a brand new Airstream isn't built for boondocking. It comes with one or two batteries. Most of them have two batteries. And the amount of battery power that you're supplied with is really intended to get you through a night or maybe two nights without hookups.
On the battery
on batteries if you're not connected to hookups. And that's it. And even 2 nights is pushing it a lot these days, which for reasons that I'll explain to you in a little while.
Yeah.
So that's the important thing to remember. If you want to boondock for long periods of time, your Airstream doesn't come off the lot really super well equipped for that. You may need to do some additional work. And the other thing is that people don't really understand the relationship between how much battery power they have and the appliances that they're using. And so we're going to try to explain some of that too, to help you understand why the batteries might be going dead, what seems like prematurely.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me ask Lance's question so we can set up and go into that as our first example. Lance wrote in his email, "My wife and I boondock in Colorado for a week every year. I have a generator that runs 5 to 7 hours every day recharging the batteries. I plug my CPAP in and it runs all night. When we wake up in the morning, everything is dead except the CPAP is running. The last night I turned off the fridge, which is all electric because he has a 2022 Airstream. It's all electric now. And it still happened. The generator is turned off when we go to bed. I haven't been able to get a satisfactory answer from anyone."
And I'm not surprised because there is, like I said, a lot of folklore and misinformation out there about this. So we'll get into that in just a second. But I do want to point out, if you have a question like Lance's, you should write to us at ask@airgear.store. The address is at the bottom of the screen. We can't promise to answer every question, but if we get a lot of the same question from several people, then we know it's something that we should probably talk about.
Yeah, and we'll group them together in an episode like this one, or we will do like we did the first episode, which was a potpourri. I actually like those. Those are really kind of fun. It's kind of almost feels like Stump the Chump. I get to ask you questions and you see if you have an answer. So,
All right, well, let's get to Lance's trailer.
Let's get to Lance's. Okay, so let's get over here and pull up first the trailer that he has.
Okay, so Lance has, as you can see, a 2022 Airstream Globetrotter 27 front bedroom twin. Now it comes with, next slide please, it comes with two batteries, and his came with two Interstate AGM batteries. That your trailer may be slightly different. We take a look at a little closer at the battery, we're going to see that there's a rating printed on it. And the battery is rated, says AH62. You see that marked in red there. That means it has 62 amp hours of capacity per battery. So you might think, well, I've got two of these batteries, so if you could click the slide again, I need to see a little bit more of that.
Okay.
If
We're
you
going to talk about two of them.
Yeah, two of the batteries, you might think, well, I've got 124 amp hours of battery capacity, but in fact, you really don't, because these are lead acid batteries. They really should only be discharged about 50% of their rated capacity. So even though you've got two of those batteries at 62 amp hours each, you really still only have 62 amp hours of usable capacity.
Okay, so we need to stop for a second and talk about this. Because first of all, I would think that 62 times 2 equals 124. That's what I would have as well. And maybe a lot of new owners might know that. But you gave me an analogy that finally hit home for me. And that was like, why does the battery, because we had this problem too. We discharged our battery, well, there were some reasons. It wasn't us that did it, but we had it in service, got discharged multiple times, and it wasn't holding as much of a charge. And you explained this to me.
And it's just like your car. If you leave the lights on at night, all night long,
Or leave the door open and the
and
overhead
the
light.
dome light is
Yeah.
on, whatever. You wake up in the morning, the battery's dead. Okay, so you recharge the battery and everything seems
Get a
fine.
jump.
But what happens if you do that a few times, you're over discharging the battery, taking capacity out of that battery. Every time you do it, it gets a little bit weaker every single time. Your battery's not going to last very long. You do that 3 or 4 times, the battery is toast. It's just done. So this is why the 50% rule. If you discharge your batteries only halfway, they'll last a long time. If you discharge them more than halfway and you do it repeatedly, they're not going to last very long at all. So that's the issue.
Well, and so to get back to Lance's issue, he has been
Killing the
discharging,
batteries.
killing, and you're going to talk a little bit more about that and what that really means. But we're already heading toward, okay, his batteries aren't holding the charge like they
And
like
that is-
they used to when they were new.
So if we go back to the slides, you're going to see this is exactly the problem. Let's take a look here.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, that 62 amp hours is when the
Oh,
batteries
when the
are
battery's
brand-
new, right?
Yeah. So
but
they
like a
do
year
age.
in,
Yeah, they're older batteries. So here's the other problem. Lance is charging with the generator. Now he says he's running that generator 5 to 7 hours. If he runs it for maybe 8 to 10 hours, he's probably going to get those batteries to full charge. But most people don't do that. They run the batteries, the generator, 2 or 3 hours. It looks like the batteries are full, but they're really not. And the reason is that the last 20%, getting from 80% to 100% full of a battery, takes a long time, like many hours. If you run it for about 3 hours, you're only going to get to about 80% of charge at best, even though it may look like it's fully charged. So we're taking 12 amp hours out of his capacity for the assumption that the generator is only charging those batteries to about 80%.
is there math on this next slide that tells us a little more?
Nope. So let's go. That's I'm just saying. These are arbitrary numbers. Okay? I just want to be clear here. We're just sort of taking these for example. Like I think that if the batteries are charged to about 80%, which is an assumption, that cost him 12 amp hours of his 62 amp hour capacity. So already he's kind of a little bit behind the curve here. Right? He doesn't have a full charge like he thinks he has.
Okay.
Or he might have a 90% charge, but certainly not a 100% charge.
Okay.
Okay. So let's keep going.
Okay.
So what's the next problem? The next problem is that he's killed these batteries a few times, like we talked about with the example of the leaving the lights on. And when you do that, you lose capacity in your batteries. So I'm going to very conservatively say that he's lost 15 amp hours of capacity.
It's kind of a guess.
Kind of a
right?
guess.
Where it's just so you're clear.
But he's probably won that. Now, if you look in the picture, you can see that the white part of the battery case is actually swollen. When they get to this point, they are beyond dead.
Right, but hold on. This is not Lance's battery.
not
I want to
Lance's
be I want to be really
No,
clear.
that's our battery.
Exactly. It's not Lance's battery. That's our battery, but and we had to replace that battery because it was swelling. But it's a really good point to make that Rich is making. If Lance continues to discharge his battery like this, it's going to swell, and then that's dangerous.
At that
right?
point, it's done. Yeah. If they get hot when they're charging, or if they start to swell, or if there's any damage to the case, it's beyond time to replace those batteries. They're actually become dangerous, and they certainly aren't going to hold a charge anyway. So you want to get rid of them.
All right.
So let's move on. So what's the next problem? Well, he's got an electric refrigerator. Remember we said it was a 2022 Airstream, comes with an electric fridge, and these electric fridges, they're efficient, but they're not perfect. They use a lot of power.
Yeah, that's one thing. I'm so grateful that we have the propane option. We can do it all electric if we're plugged in, but
we can run propane.
If you have the all electric, you've got to be even more mindful of some of the tips that we're going to talk about because that thing's running and it
takes a lot of power. So we're going to conservatively estimate that Lance's refrigerator is consuming about 20 amp hours when it's running the 8 hours that he's sleeping. All right, so that's a big load. Let's go to the next slide. And finally, we've got his CPAP machine. Oops, back one. The CPAP machine, this is Lance's actual CPAP. He sent us a picture of the back side of it, and you can see again where I've circled in red, it runs on 12 volts, and it takes a max of 3.0 amps. We don't think it's taking 3 amps all the time that it's running, but it is running continuously. So we said, let's consider that it's taking about 2.5 amps. Over 8 hours, that's 20 amp hours out of the battery. So that's as much as the refrigerator. So now you've got 2 big electrical consumers there that are sucking a lot of power out of this battery.
Right.
Okay. So you can see where we're going here.
You can see where we're going here. And now I just wanted to prepare anyone who's not like a math savvy person. Now the math.
Okay,
and
now
how we're going to do
it's not
this.
really,
No, I know.
It's barely math.
I'm being a little dramatic, but this is where we're going to summarize all this and what it means.
Okay, so let's take a look at the sort of money shot here, this last slide. So we started with a capacity when the batteries were brand new of 62 amp hours, usable, mind you, usable capacity, not to go below our limit. We figured that we weren't getting to a full charge, so we discounted that to 50 amp hours. We figured that they're somewhat worn out, so we discounted that to 35 amp hours. We know that he's got an electric refrigerator, so that took another 20 amp hours out to bring it down to 15. And then we've got the CPAP, and now we're in the negative range. So poof, the batteries have
Batteries toast.
the batteries have been over discharged. They're probably still going to put out some power because again, we're only, this is the 50% level we're talking about, but we've gone below the safe level. And if we go below the safe level, we know we're shortening the life of the batteries
Over and over and over
which means that wear and tear number gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Pretty soon the battery has no capacity at all.
Well, and he was saying in his question, if you remember, he said they boondock for a week every year. So maybe the rest of the year they're plugging in, but still, even if it's just a couple of times
If he's
while they're
boondocked
boondocking.
and they've killed those batteries 6, 7 nights in a row, well, they're very badly damaged at this point. So I would say their capacity is significantly reduced. And Lance, I'm sorry to give you the bad news, but that's your problem. You probably need new batteries.
Well, so that could be something. Or he's headed toward needing new batteries. So then what does he need to do? Like, what would you suggest with somebody with this load who's using their Airstream this way?
Well, there's really only one solution. You've got to have more battery capacity because, he tried turning off his electric refrigerator, and probably because the batteries are so discharged, it's too late for that solution. Besides, turning off your refrigerator at night, it's not a great solution. You don't want your ice cream to melt or whatever.
Yeah.
So
you want to bring ice chests and all that stuff to cool your stuff.
That's not why we bought an
No,
Airstream.
exactly not.
So I don't like that solution. I think what I would suggest is that you get a dedicated battery pack for your CPAP. And these are sold on Amazon. I looked them up. There's several out there.
$300 or $400. So that's not too bad.
No, it's not a bad solution. And that will power the CPAP by itself, which means you don't have to worry about the CPAP killing the rest of the Airstream and losing your power in the whole Airstream. To me, that's the cheapest and easiest solution to go out there. You can just buy one of these things, plug it in, you're done.
What if he upgraded to lithium?
That's another possible solution. Now, lithium's a great solution. That's what we did.
When our
replaced
batteries swelled, you made the switch. And
I was tired of them going dead on us because we had the similar problem. Even though we had a propane refrigerator, we were still running out of power on a regular basis. Going to lithium can double your battery capacity. You can run lithium batteries all the way down almost to zero without damaging them, which means you get essentially double the capacity out of the battery. That's a great solution, but it's very expensive.
Yep.
So a couple $1,000 minimum to get into a pair of lithium batteries with installation. So that is another possible solution. I'm a big fan of lithium. I think it's a great way to go. Lance may not want to spend $2,000.
So for $300 or $400, you can solve this problem, more
Probably
or
can
less.
solve
I
the
mean,
problem.
by having the dedicated CPAP, and then probably
He'll probably have to replace his batteries too.
But he could replace them with lead acid batteries. He doesn't have to go to lithium as long as he. It's almost like what you're saying is isolate the CPAP, kind of run that thing on its own because it is such a power hungry device, and then the rest you can upgrade a battery because he is. So let's just be clear here. Given the path he's on, he's still going to have to upgrade his batteries.
He's going to have to
probably pretty
replace the
soon
battery.
in one type of battery.
I would think so. Yeah. So maybe he's going to spend. I mean, you can get a pair of batteries as cheap as $200-300 if you really shop around for the lowest level of batteries. But since you boondock, you're probably going to want to go with another pair of AGMs.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit more money. A few $100 for those. A few $100 for it's. There's no problem that throwing money at it can't solve.
Well, of course not. So let's talk about other electronics and gadgets that people have asked us about, that people travel with. And the number one thing I think about is laptops, because I'm reminded of this nice couple who came into our retail store last year. And they said, our batteries keep going down while we're camping. Why might that be? And I listened to Rich Lure, who said, so, do you travel? What do you travel with? Do you travel with laptops? And they said, yes, 2. Do you travel with iPhones? Yes, 2. Do you have any tablets? Yeah, well, we have an iPad. So all of that added up to a lot of power on the battery.
It's mostly about the laptops. The laptops are the killers. I mean, your iPhone, your iPad, they use relatively little power when they're charging. So it's not a big part of the equation. But a laptop is a different story, especially if you keep your laptop plugged in and you turn the inverter on.
Yeah. Well, because you've taught me that the inverter wastes like 10% of your power, just by the nature of how an inverter works. This is not a video on inverters. We probably will do one in the future. But you got to understand that every time you use the inverter for a laptop, for the television, for a DVD, it's all like wasting.
It's wasting 10% of the power.
Yeah, of the power that you're draining.
Yes.
So the tip we have for laptops is charge up the batteries to full when you're going to go boondocking and use it without plugging it in. Because if you plug it in and the inverter's on, you're draining all this battery energy, which you don't have to. At home, I leave it plugged in most of the time. But when you're boondocking, don't do that.
Run it on the battery, and if you do need to charge it,
Then
close the laptop, charge it, and then turn off the inverter. So just use the inverter and the battery in the Airstream
only as a charger.
Only as a charger. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that's a good solution.
That's a good one. And another thought I had was, because we were in Pasadena a couple weeks ago for the Airstream Rose Parade Rally, and it was a boondocking event, and I was terrified because it was 4 nights of boondocking. I'd never done that before. But you have an amp hour meter, and I want you to talk about that because it was so cool how you were able to monitor all this usage, and you knew about our laptop.
Okay, so I've got a picture of that, a slide in here.
Right, let's do that. Go ahead and start talking about that.
So the amp hour meter is what I regard as basically essential equipment for anyone who has lithium batteries at a minimum, and I recommend it to everybody because it's the only way you can know how much power is actually going in and out of your batteries. The voltmeter that comes with an Airstream is highly inaccurate, and it's not useful at all for lithium. It's pretty much a waste of space for lithium. Because lithium batteries, what you need is this device, which measures how much power is going in and out of the battery very, very precisely. Now, the picture of this thing on the left here is what's called a Victron Smart Shunt. It's the cheapest way. It's the one we use. It's the cheapest way to get into an amp hour meter. It mounts directly to the battery. You connect the cables to it. And on the right side, you see a picture of the phone app. You actually monitor it through your phone, and it will show you exactly what's going on with that battery very, very precisely.
So what is like battery voltage 13.64?
Well, what this is showing our Airstream when it's actually plugged in. So it's showing
100% charge.
100% charge. Okay. The battery voltage is normal for lithium. It shows 0 current. Okay, that's because it's neither charging nor discharging at this particular moment.
Why? Because it was in the driveway.
Because it's in the driveway. It's plugged in. Yeah. So, but if you were boondocking, it would show a negative number. It would show you exactly how many amps you are using at that exact moment. So you can monitor and find out, oh, when I turn on the inverter, it uses this many amps. When I turn on the light, when I turn on the water pump, the furnace, my laptop, any consumer of electricity, it's going to show up on your phone app, and you'll be able to say, oh, that thing uses a lot of power. Maybe we should restrict it. You'll even be able to figure out how much your refrigerator pulls.
And then you were just watching that 100% go down and down and down and no. But because we had lithium, so here's where the lithium is better in these longer term boondocking. We knew we could run it way down and not worry. Whereas if we had the lead acid batteries, once it was running down like below 20% is bad?
No, 10? For lead acid, 50%. That's the rule.
Oh, so like if you were looking at let me go back to this. So if you were looking at the state of charge and it said 50% and you had lead acid batteries,
you're done.
You're done.
That's it. That's it. You're done camping. At that point, you can still use your batteries, but you're going to damage them. You're going to shorten their life.
And this is really helpful because if I didn't have you in my household, I would just think, I bought this Airstream and it's only a year old and it says 50%. I'm good. It's kind of like, well, you know me, I run it when I'm driving and I get the 50 gallons left in the gas tank. I keep letting it down and down and down. I run it all the way, 50 gallons left of gas. So this is really important. If you have lead acid, don't let it go below 50.
Don't let it go below 50.
But that's again why this amp hour meter is really helpful.
It's the only device that's accurately going to tell you what's going on. Now, when we left this rally in Pasadena, our batteries were at 16%. So we did get through 4 days of boondocking.
Yay for us.
And it was cloudy the whole time.
We ran our furnace and we ran our lights.
We forgot to bring our car generator, so we had no way to charge it.
And our portable solar kit did not work because there was no sun.
It was cloudy, so all of our backup methods were out of commission, and we had to do it just on battery, and we did. We came out of this with 16%. Yeah. And because we have lithium batteries, 16% didn't hurt them. Everything was well. So it was really a great solution. And again, if you're willing to spend the money to go to lithium if you don't already have it, it's a great way to go.
It's a game changer.
It is.
Okay, where do they get the Smart Shunt? You said Amazon is how much does it cost?
It's this Smart Shunt, I don't remember. It's less than $200, I believe. It's a DIY install if you don't mind working with 12-volt cables. Not particularly difficult to install. It shows that it sort of screws on. I just taped mine onto the battery. I have a blog on our site. If you go to airgear.store and you look at our guides, you'll see a guide called Diary of a Lithium
Yeah,
Battery
you know what?
Upgrade.
It's in the video notes. I'll put
Okay,
that
we'll
in
put it in
there.
the notes.
So
And
you
if
can
you
go
go
and
to
read it.
Diary of a Lithium Battery Upgrade, you will find pictures of how I installed the smart shunt. It's really quite simple. And I just double taped it right to the battery.
Okay, that's great installation. So a really good idea to do that.
Yep.
Okay, so a couple other quick tips that we had for just not running down the battery. We've already talked about the laptops, not plugging them in, but just rather running them off the battery. Turning down the heat at night because the furnace uses a lot. And we have a picture of that because
Oh, that's
we don't have a picture of the furnace, but we have a picture of the micro air, which is what we use. We've switched over to this. A lot of people are upgrading from their Dometic or their Coleman, and we do sell both of those upgrade versions in our store. But it's just so easy to read. So we turned our heat down to 62
at night.
at night, which sounds a little chilly, but honestly,
It was great for sleeping.
it's great for sleeping.
Yeah.
And so you want to do that. And what else do we think? Oh, don't let the TV run all day. You know, you should be out doing something anyway. But I mean, some people, I look around in the campground, it's not Airstreamers, but other RVers. I see them with their giant TVs. They've got 3 of them, and they're sitting there watching TV. So get out there and play, and that's something that can really draw down your battery.
Yeah, the
Big
TV,
time.
I looked at my amp hour meter while we were watching. We did watch a movie while we were in Pasadena.
Harry Potter. We're blowing through all the Harry Potter movies right now.
We had to tell them.
Potter.
Yes, we're grown people.
Yeah.
And we were watching a movie one night, and I pulled out my phone just to see how much power we were consuming between the DVD player, the inverter, and the television. It's actually not as much as you would think. It was about 4 or 5 amps, as I recall. I mean, it's not an inconsequential amount of power, but the point is that I was aware of it. I could budget for it.
Yeah.
And then 2 nights later, I was able to say, hey, we've got enough battery power to watch another movie if we want to. So having the amp hour meter really makes a big difference. Avoiding the use of the inverter, turning the furnace down, understanding the big power consumers in your Airstream is going to make all the difference. And this will help you not run out of power while you're camping.
Yeah. And so to circle back to what this really was about is all of these things relate to you've got to know what you have to work with. And you have to realize that your Airstream's really only intended for 1 or 2 nights off hookups.
That's
So
right.
once you get those 2 things down, you'll be good to go. And so that is it. But I do want to put up our wait.
I'll show you.
No.
We want to put up our
No.
slide
Oh,
here.
it's all in the beginning. That's okay. We're learning. It's only episode 2, people, right? We want you to ask us questions, please, because we love to get the real questions from real Airstreamers, which is what this video series is about.
Yeah.
And this video series is supported by the Air Gear store. I mean, we appreciate you shopping in our store because that allows us to do stuff like this and serve the community with good, credible content and advice and recommendations.
So we thank you, the customers of Air Gear, who've helped us out. And don't forget, now we have to say this, I know everybody says it, but please hit the like and subscribe buttons.
Oh, that's right.
If you want to follow our content, you should do that. Otherwise, you may not get notified by YouTube when we put up the next Ask Air Gear.
Okay. That's all we have today. Till the next episode, we will see
you
you
on the road.